Welcome, everybody, to the September 2017 Professor Messer A-Plus Study Group. This is my monthly study group where I ask you questions that have to do with topics from the A-Plus certification, and you can answer online in real time if you're watching this live. We're coming to you live from the Messer Studios headquarters here in Tallahassee, Florida, where we are under a hurricane look and see. Many of you who are watching this live know that there's a really bad Hurricane Irma out in the Caribbean that is heading this way. So we'll have to see how things work out here. We've already gone through a few of those here, but you never know what's going to happen with those crazy storms. Or if you're watching this in the replay, none of that matters anymore. We're either here or we're not anymore. You'll have to tune into a newer one to find out what happened. We should know by next week, right? We'll see if we have a study group, the Network Plus study group next week, and see what happens. We do one of these study groups once a month. We're able to do this thanks to your support. I'll be doing Q&A during this first hour. And in the second hour, I'm just going to open up the phone lines. If you'd like to join us live, if you're here watching live, you can go to professormesser.com/live. There's a chat there, and I can go through this list of things that you put there. You can ask questions in the chat so I can answer them. I also will take those phone calls. And it's just open phone lines in the second hour where we can talk about certifications. We can talk about hurricanes. We can talk about Destiny 2 release dates. We can talk about anything you'd like. I'm fine with that. Don't forget about joining us on the Twitter, on the YouTube, on the Facebook. You type in professormesser.com/ the name of the thing, and it takes you there, /Facebook, /YouTube, /Twitter. If you subscribe on YouTube, you get a notification that these things are going on. So that's kind of nice too. And don't forget about the vouchers. professormesser.com/vouchers is a voucher discount. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. You can get immediately right off the top on any of the CompTIA vouchers. If you're also watching this, maybe you already have one of your certifications and you need continuing education credits, I can provide those. I'm a little behind at getting them out, but I will be getting them out hopefully this week before I lose power. It's one of those kinds of things. You can always get a CEU from me. I will tell you sometime during this first hour how you'll be able to earn one of those continuing education unit credits. So keep listening. I'm going to put it in there somewhere, and you'll never know when it's coming. That way I know you were able to watch this because you were able to give me or follow the instructions that I give you during that time frame. There is on the A-plus exam, 2 exams you'll need to take to get your A-plus certification. One is the 22901, one is the 22902. There are, it's been around for a while, since December the 15th of 2015. And usually it's 3 years before we see one of these updated. So we have plenty of time before a new one is coming out. If you are already A-plus certified and you're looking to renew, you generally don't take the certification exams again. There is a renewal exam. There's a lot of things you can do online to earn CEUs directly from CompTIA. A lot of interesting things there relating to that. The exam, of course, is the 901 and 902. Whenever we go through questions today, it's going to be associated with these 2 exams: hardware networking, mobile devices, and network and hardware troubleshooting on the 901. And the 902 is the Windows operating system, other operating systems, including Mac and Linux, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. Don't forget also, I've got my Q&A books, my pop quiz collection, I call them, for the 22901 and 902, to combine a total of 1,300 questions, more questions than you would get anywhere in any one place, in any book, in any single sitting, I suppose. I think we've got 800 for the 901 and 700 for the 902, something like that. It's a huge database of questions, and it's all delivered digitally. It's a PDF file. You can take it with you anywhere, and each one of those is $15 each. You can find out more at professormesser.com/PQC. I've also got some free questions online. There's the 20 question hunks of questions that I have online for you for A-plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus. These don't cost anything. These are free. How'd that happen? I'll have to talk to someone. You can take all of these questions. They're all available. professormesser.com/popquiz. If you also want to listen to this podcast after the fact in an audio form, it is in a podcast form. Normally, I put these on YouTube. You can watch the video. There's a replay available immediately after this is done. The podcasts are available also online. You can find those at professormesser.com/podcasts. Now, as I mentioned, you will be answering questions today. To be able to do that, you need to pop open another browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA, or you can download an app called the Socrative Student app, and you would go to a room name, Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser, and you can start that up. Now, if you do that, go to professormesser.com/QA in your browser. Then you'll see a question waiting for you, which is, an incredibly important question. When was the waffle cone first used to serve ice cream? Did I say waffle cone properly? When was the waffle cone first used to serve ice cream? Obviously not an A+ question, is it? But that's okay. This is to get us accustomed to using this Socrative Q&A front end. I can see your answers as you're answering them. So you will see there are a number of options available. One is 1776, one is 1854, one is 1904, and one is 1976. Now remember, no Googling and no putting answers in the chat room. We need to think about these questions as we go through. Obviously, all of the other questions we're going to do today will be all about A+. This one, though, is about ice cream. And you can see that if we had to pick a winner, 56% of you so far say 1904. So if you're seeing that question, then you just stay on this page. You don't have to move. I will change the questions for you magically on the internet. If you aren't seeing that, you can try going again to professormesser.com/QA and get there with no problem. Now, the reason I asked this question about ice cream and waffle cones is that the waffle cone, it was introduced in 1904. So the answer was indeed 1904 at the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri. This is the reason I put this in is because that today, September the 6th, is National Coffee Ice Cream Day. I guess not National Coffee Ice Cream Day. It's more like National Coffee Ice Cream Day. It's all about phrasing, isn't it? So if you answered C, 1904, 59% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do some A+ questions, shall we? Enough of the announcements, enough of the samples. Let's see if we can get these going. Now, one of the things you'll run into if you take your A+ exam is one of the first things you get on the exam are these questions that CompTIA calls performance-based questions. They're not multiple choice. They're not anything relating to pick A, B, C, or D. They might be fill in the blank. They might be a matching. They might have you put things in a particular order. They might put you into a command line, and you have to do things at a command line. They might put you on a Windows screen. You never know what you'll be presented with. So what the first question I always do on these study groups is give you a performance-based question. And here's the one for today. This is one where I'm giving you 3 images, an A, a B, and a C. And I want you to match the interface to the description. And the descriptions you can see here are digital keyboard, I guess a standard keyboard, a QWERTY keyboard, external storage, audio speaker, LCD display, and WAN. And I've got these 3 interfaces here that I want you to tell me what they match here to the description. Now we have 6 descriptions and we've got 3 interfaces. So obviously we have more descriptions than interfaces. That's so you really have to look through them to be able to answer them, but it will make them easy. If you think they match up perfectly, A, B, and C match up with 1, 2, and 3, you can simply put into the fill in the blank that's there in Socrative, A1, B2, C3. That'd be a good way to answer that. So I can see the answers that are coming through. So if you have to really look at these interfaces. I put both the interface itself, not only the plug that's plugging into it, but the connector that you would plug into as well. This is one where you might get a question like this on the exam where you have to match things up. Notice I'm not giving you what is the name of the interface. And this is very common that you'll see on the exam is they're not asking you for definitions. They don't care that you know the definitions. They care that you know how to use these technologies, how they apply to what you're doing. So make sure you go through this and figure out what these things happen to be. Maybe we know what they are. I think I know what they are. I'm looking at what they are. You can't see them on your screen, but I can see them on my screen. You guys are really good at this. I think we're getting close to, if not 100%. Of what you're putting in here. Well, almost 100%, 99.9%. Of course, as soon as I say that, somebody puts one in with one that's a little bit wrong. Not quite right. But there's only 3 answers here. There's not 6 answers. I've only got 3 interfaces. So you've got to pick up the 3. So it'll be 3 of the descriptions will be left over. You don't even use them. What a waste of descriptions. What happened there? Well, I can't really show you a lot of the details coming through, but I can show you the answer. So let's flip over and see how we did with this one. Do you remember how you answered A, B, and C? Well, here we have 3 to look at. I've got LCD display, external storage, and keyboard accordingly. And that's because the display port is the LCD display. That's the number 5 that's in front of us. The number 2, or the second one, B, external storage, really the only one of our descriptions that fits that, because it is what would normally be a mini display port, but in this case, we're using it as a Thunderbolt interface. So very common. In fact, I'm recording right now. This presentation is being recorded. You can see the lights that are flashing here. Those are video recorders that are recording the 2 video signals that I'm sending out, both the preview and the one that is going out as the program. And I'm recording those through Thunderbolt. That's how I grab them off of that later on. They actually go in as a different video format, but I get them off using Thunderbolt, and they look like an external storage device. So I use Thunderbolt all the time for that. And the third is keyboard. You don't really see these interfaces much anymore, though. These are PS2 interfaces. And the PS2 interface is one where it's this odd little mini DIN connector. You'll also see a very similar connector for the older style mouse. Normally, of course, these days we're using USB interfaces, but you will still run into systems, especially older servers, that are using this older style PS2 connection and being able to work through there. So maybe that's one thing we can look at. If you don't know all of the details about the interfaces that you're working with, you aren't quite sure about them, go through and make sure you know what each of those interfaces look like and ways that you could use it. You may very easily get a matching question on your exam that's very similar to that. Let's move to the next question then. I have more questions. Let's do another one. Now we're going to do a multiple choice, so it's a little bit easier. And the question is, which of these would be the most likely use of this interface? I couldn't get enough interfaces here, so I wanted to show you an interface on the screen and say, what would the most likely use be? Now, it is multiple choice. If you go to professormesser.com/QA, remember, do not answer this in the chat room or give me any hints. Is it A, connection to a television, B, an external storage link, C, a keyboard/mouse connection, D, a webcam interface, or E, a docking station interface? One of those would be the most likely use of that interface. And I've got a bigger picture for those of you that can't see very well with that one. There it is. There's the interface on, looks like a laptop. Extra points if you can point to each one of those interfaces and tell me what they are. We might even do that when we're done with this particular question. I think we'll do exactly that. I'm looking at the next slide. I've already thought of that. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So let's see how we answered with this one. We'll go through here. Which would be the most likely use of the interface? Well, 53% of you, about half of you, have said external storage link. 22% have said docking station interface. A tie for a third between connect to a television and a keyboard mouse connection. And then only 3% said a webcam interface. So the real question is, what is that interface with the red thing around it? What could that possibly be? Well, if we put some labels on it, here they are. So we have a display port is the one to the far left. We have a couple of USB interfaces coming up here on the right of the one we were interested in. And on the far right is a FireWire interface. FireWire interface. So the real question is, what is that one right there? What is the one that we're really trying to figure out? And the real challenge, of course, is that's eSATA. It's not one you really see very much unless you're planning to plug in to an external SATA connection with that eSATA, but that's absolutely an eSATA connection. And obviously eSATA, just like the name, the SATA configuration for the serial ATA implies there must be some type of storage to be able to work through it. So indeed it would be storage, and the 55% of you that said external storage link got that one absolutely right. It would not be a docking station interface, which generally those are more proprietary. if you're going to be using them. You've got connection to a television would be probably an HDMI or a VGA connection. This is neither of those. It's definitely an eSATA connection. Keyboard mouse connection would be either USB or a mini DIN. This is neither USB nor mini DIN. And webcam interface, and really these days, keyboard, mouse, and webcam almost all use USB these days. So it's not one of those that you really run into, and being able to work through all of those pieces. So if you did answer B, external storage link, the 56% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. We've got more. Let's see if I can. I've lost my headset, and it's now pulling me back. It's pulling me back down to the floor. Here's the next question for you. Which of the following is most associated with WPA? WPA, what a group. I miss those days. WPA, this is which of the following is most associated with WPA? This is a multiple choice question. The possible answers are A, VPN, B, WWAN, intentionally saying these wrong, C is 802.11, D is dial-up link, and E is wired Ethernet. Which of these is most associated with WPA? WPA. Being able to work through this. WPA you will run into probably in your travels. It's certainly part of the CompTIA exam objectives. So you will see them on the objectives. You need to know what WPA is. You need to know how it works. You need to know when you would use it, when you would not use it. Probably more importantly, don't want to run into a challenge there of using the wrong thing at the wrong time. So which of the following is most associated with WPA? I don't think I fooled very many people with this one. I don't think so. Let's see how we did with the answer on what's most associated with WPA. And indeed, 82% of you said 802.11. Wouldn't it be crazy if that wasn't the right answer? I don't know. 83% of you doing pretty good. So you've got VPN 3%, 7% said a wireless WAN. You've got 5% said dial-up link, and 4% said wired Ethernet. So not only is 82% so strong, but you've got only single digits for the other answers, being able to work through those. Well, indeed, this is very commonly used on a wireless connection. This is one where if you're configuring wireless, you will be configuring the name of your network, your SSID. You've got your security type, your encryption type, and then you've got other encryption types associated with it. In fact, this is the section 2 where if you're trying to connect this WPA connectivity, this WPA encryption is where you commonly see WPA2. In fact, that's the one you should be using these days, is not really WPA, although you'll see many people like me abbreviate it that way. You'll really see WPA2. That's the one you should be using. That's the one you probably only have an option to use on the most modern hardware. And I say most modern, really the last number of years. WPA2 is really your only option for encryption because there's really not much others that you would ever want to use. The WPA2 personal, you may also hear this or see this referred to as a PSK or pre-shared key, means there's only one key. This is normally what you put on your home wireless access point is a WPA2 personal, and then you give everybody in your house the name of the key, and they're able to connect to the network. If you're in an enterprise, you're in a business, you're probably using WPA2 Enterprise. It may be called WPA2 802.1x, which is the method that is used to take your normal username and password that you use to log into your network. It uses that to allow you access to the wireless network. So everybody has a different username and password, and it's all done automatically behind the scenes. Pretty nifty in the way that it operates, all done with that wireless connectivity and encryption and everything secure. So if you are using WPA, and more specifically WPA2, then 802.11 is what is most associated with that. The 83% of you that answered C, 802.11, got that one absolutely right. There is about 1 million different topics on the A+ certification. Well, it seems like 1 million. There aren't 1 million, but there's a lot. The A+ certification hits you with a lot of topics, but not very deep on any of them. but it still means you need to know all of these different topics, everything from hardware and networking and security and troubleshooting and using things at a command line and understanding Windows and Linux and Mac OS. There's a lot that you'd have to go through. Well, I've gone through every single one of my videos, and I've created a set of notes for you so that you don't have to go through all of the videos and make your own notes. You're certainly welcome to do so. And I encourage you to do as much as you can, but not everybody has the time to go through every single video and take notes of every single thing. So I've taken all of my course notes and I've made them available for you through my A+ course notes. Very simple for you to be able to use those. I'll show you my 901 course notes. Let's pull up those and have a look at them. I don't even have them ready to go. That's on the storm was on my mind today. I'll show you the 901 course notes. I was looking at these earlier to give you an idea of what those would be like. My 901 course notes, here we go. Let me scroll through here. There they are. There's the beginning, there's the introduction, and here's the notes themselves. So going through the list, I've got pictures of I took these pictures, I put the memory on and took the pictures. I've got processors, all of the diagrams from my videos, all of the tables, all of the important text. I try to take everything and put it into one document. So this might be something that you can use, and if it is, you can find out more at ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN for A+ course notes. See what I did there? And you'll be able to find those. They're $15 a piece. There's also a printed version. I don't even have it with me here at the desk, but I've got a book version too that you can buy for another $15. And that way we can print it. I'll ship it to you. And when you buy the printed version, you also get the PDF version. So you get really two for the price of that single one. Well, it's really two for the price of two. Let's not mess around here, but at least you have something printed. A lot of people like to have a printed version, and it costs money to do a color print like this. And if you're willing to buy that color print, I'm willing to send it to you. So you've got the option. You can get a PDF version, or you can get the PDF and printed version, and I'll send it to you by following the link ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN. You can find all the pricing and all the information about the course notes right there. And thank you for those of you that have purchased it. Every one of those, every purchase goes back to keeping the website running. Thank you so much. Really would not be able to do it without you. Let's do another question. I've got an A+ question here dealing with protocols and Windows. Which of these protocols would be the best choice for printing from a Windows workstation? Which of these protocols would be the best choice for printing from a Windows workstation? Would it be SNMP? Would it be DNS? Would it be SMB? Would it be SMTP? Or would it be AFP? One of those would be the best choice for printing from a Windows workstation. If you think you know the answer, do not put any comments in the chat room. And make sure that you have a look at ProfessorMesser.com/QA to do that. Very, very easy to make that happen. So that's one that whenever I start looking through this and the way you work through printing, you often don't see the process underneath the surface and behind the scenes. But that's one of those where, gosh, you could spend a lot of time working through how to look at the protocols going back and forth. But before you do that, you're going to need to understand the protocols and how they operate. So maybe you too will be able to do that. See if you happen to know the answer. I'm going to take a sneak peek. Well, it's about a lot of you have already answered. So let's all take a peek at what the possible answers are. 41% of you, not a majority, but certainly the largest number who have answered, have said C, SMB. 30% of you have said A, SNMP. And we got a tie for third, D, SMTP, and E, AFP. There's too many letters here. And then 4% of you had said DNS. Just drop the letter off the front. So 41% SMB, 29% SNMP, a tie for third with SMTP and AFP. So what would it be? 40 is not the majority. 41% is not a majority. We're going to have another class lesson on what a majority is. The answer in this particular case, no messing around, I'll just tell you straight up, SMB, server message block. We got file sharing and printer sharing. Whenever Windows is performing some of these functions, the Windows protocol, the Windows language that Microsoft uses for Windows devices to talk to other Windows devices is very commonly server message block. It is a derivative or an adjunct to another set of file systems and protocols called CIFS, the Common Internet File System. You may see it referred to as that. And there were other derivatives as well through the years, but these days SMB is how we pretty much refer to it. There are a number of protocols that are a number of transports that will get this SMB between devices. Some of these use UDP, some use TCP. There's also a direct SMB connection that's commonly used these days for printing, for file sharing. It's SMB running over TCP port 445. There's no NetBIOS there. It's just IP going back and forth in there and dealing with it, the server message block. It's a block of cheese. People ask, why is there cheese on the screen? It's a block of cheese. The server message block. Work with me, people. So if you look at the answers, the 45% of you that said SMB, although not a majority, did get it correct. You're pretty close to a majority. SMB, whenever you look at server message block, you'll run into this quite a bit in the Windows world. Oh, that's very good. Bart says the reason there's cheese because SMB is cheesy. We also have other protocols on the screen. We got SNMP, the 28% of you that answer that, the Simple Network Management Protocol. Although used for many management functions to be able to see if devices are up, what their current status is, how well they're running, it's not used for printing in a Windows world. We've got the 12% that said SMTP, the mail transfer protocol, very simple mail transfer protocol, is used for mail. It's an email protocol, not used for printing. 11% said AFP, the Apple file share. That's the file share protocol that Apple uses. Pretty good if you're using OS X, OS 10. But the problem, though, is we asked for Windows in this case. So it would not be OS 10. And then you've got DNS, the domain name service. Those protocols are also not used for printing. Really, the only choice that you have in this list would definitely be C, server message block, SMB. The 45% of you got that one right. Well done. Nice with that one. Let's go through another question. We're going right through them pretty well now, and we've got cheese jokes, all for the price of one ticket. The question is, which of these Linux commands would be the most appropriate for upgrading your browser? I told you earlier, the A+ exams very often ask you questions about Linux, OS 10, and Windows. And so we've got a Linux question here. Which of these Linux commands would be the most appropriate for upgrading your browser? Would it be A, Firefox-update? Would it be B, inst-check? Would it be C, chown, CHOWN? Would it be D, apt-get? Would it be E, update? The Firefox update, inst-check, chown, apt-get, update. It's got to be one of those. If you ever worked in Linux and needed to upgrade your browser, well, now we need to really look at how we would do that. Probably not just your browser. There might be a number of things you need to update. Can we even see the question with my head in the way? There we go. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You'll be able to answer. I'm again going to take a sneak peek and see if a number of you have put on your Linux caps. You know, one of the challenges in Linux is that there's a lot of ways to do a single thing. If you're trying to do something in Linux, there are often 2 or 3 or 4 ways to do it. You ask a Linux person, how do I do this? You'll get one answer. You ask another Linux person, how do I do this? You'll get yet another answer. I just went through this with a server upgrade I did. No, only one of these is correct. So some of these are asking, could it be 2 of these? No, in this particular case, it's not. The reason it would not be 2 of them, even if somebody did create some kind of script that had a name associated with this, the question asks you which of these would be the most appropriate for upgrading your browser. The version of Linux doesn't matter in this question. You need to know many different versions of Linux. And one of these answers applies to the things that you're asked on the exam objectives. It's one of those that you really do have to become a little bit familiar with Linux administration. And if you're doing anything these days in IT, it only helps you to have a little bit of Linux knowledge in your pocket ready to go. Let's see how we did with this. You can see that 56% of you said that it was apt-get. And we've got 17% dropped off. That's 57% a majority. by the way. Said apt-get. 17% said update. 14% said Firefox update. 6% said inst-check. And 6% said chown. So we've got a number of ways to update in Linux. But the one that we were really looking for in this question, and the only one that was appropriate in this question, is apt-get, the advanced packaging tool. That's what that stands for. If you're ever trying to perform an upgrade, certain flavors, certain distributions of Linux will use apt-get to do this. Other distributions might use yum to do this. Yum, that's a real thing that will update some of your Linux. The Linux distribution that you are on, if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, the Linux distribution that you are on uses yum to be able to do its update. So I've been doing a lot of yum this week because I've been doing a lot of updates. As for instance, if you want to install a program, you would apt-get install and then the name of the program. You'd apt-get update the name of the program you want to update. Very easy, simple to use, very quick to use, very useful to have there too. You can tell it to update everything, and it'll just go through your whole operating system and update everything in one fell swoop. Probably not a great idea from a change control perspective, but sure simplifies things, makes them a little bit easier. So if you were one of the folks, the 58% of you that chose D, apt-get, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Would not be Firefox update, inst-check, or update. I kind of made those up as being application update utilities. chown is used for changing the ownership of a file. That's a real utility. That's a real command line function and something you do need to know on the A+ exam objectives. So it becomes very useful to have that there. There is quite a bit whenever you're working through these and having this functionality there. This is one wherever I start going through and trying to figure out, how do I get hands-on with Linux? How do I get hands-on with Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8? I have to know 3 different operating systems for the exam. Well, fortunately, the folks at GTS Learning already know about this, and they've got live labs that are able to do all of these things. So if you're somebody who's trying to go through and figure out, how do I go through all of these different scenarios inside of Windows to work with the operating system, to install things, to be able to get the security configured properly, to work with the networking, to get all of those different things running, the best way to do it is obviously get hands-on. I constantly tell you, you need to get hands-on. And so the live labs do exactly that. In fact, here are the live labs for the A+. Let's do one called Configuring and Managing Printers. That would be a good one to work through. And let's go through the printer. There's a bunch on this network. There's 5 devices on this network to work with, and a printer to be able to work through them. And it's a virtual environment. So I can go through and power on. I can power on. I can power this on. I get all the machines powered on. So instead of having 5 separate computers where you're working, I've got 5 separate devices here, all working at the same time, and they're booting up right now. So we'll come back to these in just a moment. If you want to know more about these live labs, they're available. You can see all about it at ProfessorMesser.com/live labs. That's the link you'll want to follow to be able to get the special discounted price. If you go to the GTS Learning site directly, you pay more. The only way you get the best price is to follow this link here, ProfessorMesser.com/live labs. Live labs are $109 for a year's access, and you also get the book along with it. If you just want the book, it's $35 without any labs. So you've got some options there at least whenever you want to work through them. The labs themselves work great. I've got three of these virtual machines have already up and running. I've got a Windows 8 device. There it is. So it's Windows 8. There's nothing unusual there. I've got a Windows 7 device here that's already started too. I can scroll through them. There's another Windows 8 device on the screen. I've got a bunch of different Windows devices that I can now connect to, and I'm going to be connecting to them. There's another Windows 8. There it is. And I've got some servers up here to use as well, domain controllers that I can work through. So you've got some Windows servers. So you're actually working on server equipment, and you can see pretty fast. I'm going to pull up the file system here so you can give it a look at what we're working with. Whenever I started working on my servers, whenever I wanted to go through and power them on and off, I can power them all down. And now we're working through the power down cycle. So it's very simple to go in, and now I can follow the labs. Let's go to the next part of the lab and work through step by step what they happen to be, along with screenshots. So it's very easy to follow, to work with, to enable, and you're not touching a thing on your system. So I just start up a bunch of systems and shut them all down. It had nothing to do with my local machine. It's all on my browser. No extra software to run. If that's something that might interest you, go to professormesser.com/live labs. You can try these out yourself and work through those, being able to have that there. There are other questions I have for you. I want to, by the way, thank the folks at GTS Learning also for their support of our live study groups. Always nice to have that there as well. Got more questions for you while I'm working through some of my live labs. I've still got my live labs on the screen over here, working through them. I was setting them up and recycling them through, and now I'm just randomly clicking on the screen. Here we go. We can start, even there's the lab device client right there. So we can go through and start the client up on my Windows machine. Let's do another question though. This question specifically, which of the following would best describe an IPS LCD? Which would best describe an IPS LCD? I've got to click the button so you can see the answers. The possible answers are less expensive to produce than a TN LCD. It has a low power draw, has excellent color representation. It does not require a backlight, or does it have relatively fast response times? Only one of these would best describe an IPS LCD. An IPS LCD. What in the world's an IPS LCD? Well, if that's what you're thinking, we're already in trouble. You definitely have to know about your LCD types to be able to work through them. It's one of those where you do have to go through, figure out all the different pieces of working through an IPS LCD. See if you know what this one might be. This is one where we really have to think back and think, what are those LCDs? What are the different options? Why would one be better than another? This is a very good example of a question on the exam where they don't ask you what an IPS LCD is. They don't even ask you what it means. They want to know more about how it's used. So that's one you always want to work through and be able to understand what are the differences between all of those. Maybe you know. And if you do, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer the question. I guess you can stop going through the details of this too, whenever you work through them, working through all the different pieces. And if you don't know what an IPS LCD is, you are in trouble. That is a little bit of a challenge. Let's see how we did. We've got some possible answers for us. Got a few here to be able to work through. If we look at the different options, how'd we do? Here we go. Well, 43% of us said excellent color representation. And we've got pretty much on second place, a relatively fast response time. And then really a tie for third between less expensive to produce than a TN LCD and low power draw. And then finally, 9% said does not require a backlight. So one of these would best describe an IPS LCD. There's really, in this case, two that we need to think about when we talk about response times, colors, backlights. There's so many different parameters that we're dealing with LCDs. When we talk about TN and IPS as the two primary LCD types that you'll run into on most of our computing devices. A twisted pneumatic LCD is the TN LCD. It is one you'll most commonly find generally. They're very fast response times on these LCDs. They don't use a lot of power, so we see them quite a bit whenever you're working with portable devices. The problem is that the viewing angle isn't very good. You ever turn an LCD and it looks like an inverse color of what you were looking at? That's something you'll commonly see with the TN LCDs. There's also an IPS LCD, an in-plane switching LCD. Great colors on the in-plane switching. So if you are someone who is doing something with video editing, you're doing some layout work for something in printed form, you need very good color representation, you might want to consider an IPS LCD. These are a little more expensive than the TN LCDs, but boy, they sure come in handy. A laptop could have either one. Some of the higher end laptops have IPS LCDs on them. They're pretty nice. You don't have to have the TN LCD. Just put more battery in the device and now use the nicer screen. It can really help you if you travel a lot. So if we look at the things that are certainly more or less on this list, less expensive to produce than TN, well, we know the TN now is probably the less expensive when we look at these. It's rapidly coming close, but still the TN tends to be a little less expensive. Low power draw, well, that doesn't describe IPS at all. In fact, we said it is a high power draw in that case relative to the TN LCD. We have excellent color representation. Indeed, I just said we would want an IPS if we were doing excellent color representation. So it looks like that's our answer. C, 44% of you. Let's see if it is. Does not require a backlight? Well, both of those LCD types require a backlight. And relatively fast response times. We have the faster response times on TN, not the IPS. So in fact, it would be C. Excellent color representation is the only option here that best describes an IPS LCD. So if you answered C, the 45% of you, excellent color representation, absolutely correct. Well done with getting those. There's a lot of different LCD, OLED, different types of display technologies you need to know about. Make sure you go through there. There's a whole section of them in the exam objectives. Make sure you go through them and know what everything is in those exam objectives. Let's move off to a different question dealing with something you probably have in your home, and that's a SOHO network. SOHO, I'm not even going to tell you what SOHO is because that would really mess things up. But the question is, which of the following would not commonly be associated with a SOHO network? Would it be A, a wireless access point? Would it be B, dynamic routing? Would it be C, a firewall? Would it be D, a content filter? Or would it be E, NAT? Is it a wireless access point, dynamic routing, firewall, content filter, or NAT? One of those would not commonly be associated with the SOHO network. If you think you know, you want to put it at professormesser.com/QA and answer the question. Do not put it in the chat room. Do not put hints in the chat room. Those hints, we know that could be a thing, the hints in the chat room. So want to wait until we see the answers before we start discussing those in the chat room. Then you can talk away. Say whatever you'd like after that point. Once I tell you what the answer is, then of course you can say whatever you'd like. Not giving away anything at that point. And if you're watching this in the replay, there isn't a chat room. I'm so sorry. Being able to work through those. I apologize, but don't have a way to integrate it right now. Have been considering that. Maybe that'd be a good thing to have the chat room going at the bottom of the screen. The problem is that sometimes things get in the chat room I don't want on the video. Could be an issue. So it's one of those where I have to think about, do I really want to integrate the chat with this video? I go back and forth over it. I welcome your thoughts and suggestions. Let's see how we did. Which of these would not commonly be associated with a SOHO network? Well, we have 42% have said content filter. That's the number one answer. The number two answer would be B, dynamic routing. 29% of you said dynamic routing. 19% of you said NAT. 6% of you said firewall. And 4% of you said wireless access point. Let's talk about the SOHO, the small office, home office. That's what that stands for. And usually you've got a very small office. You often see small office where it's a single person or a group of people in a small office. Could also be a store, although stores tend to be very unique in their computing networking requirements. You generally don't have standard computers. You have point of sale terminals. That's one of those where you run into. But usually you have a single device, and the single device is doing many different things. It might be a wireless access point. It might be routing. It might be a firewall. It might be doing content filtering. But it's really a very simple product. There have been a number of things added to this over time. For instance, now almost all of these SOHO devices have content filtering in them. You're able to do URL filtering in the device. It's able to look for certain viruses and URLs and filter them out in the device. What you commonly don't see in these devices are more advanced functions like dynamic routing, where the router that's inside of this device will automatically send advertisements to the network and receive routing advertisements and adjust the routing inside of this device accordingly. But this device is usually just connected to a single network. There's really no need to do any type of dynamic routing. The routing table is, if anything's on the inside, send it on the outside. And if anything is coming from the outside, send it to the inside. That's as complex as the routing gets. There's no need for any dynamic changes there. There aren't multiple devices. It's not one that does anything that needs to change over time. There's not a failover. So there's no need to deal with anything related to dynamic routing on here. So if we look at our possible answers, which of these would not commonly be associated with the SOHO network? Well, we know that we have content filtering in these devices now, especially URL filtering. We have network, whenever you deal with, by the way, an internal network like this, you're never using a public address. So you're always doing some type of translation of the address. And the way that we do that on practically any of these devices, firewalls, routers, and other devices, are network address translation functions within those. So NAT is certainly included in all of these devices. We absolutely have wireless access points in these devices. That makes it easy. And we absolutely have firewalls in these devices. It's one of the primary reasons we put them on the edge of the network. The one thing we don't have, and again, the question asked you, which of the following would not commonly be associated with a SOHO network, would be B, dynamic routing. The 29% of you, I try to get to half. That's not quite there. We got about 30% of you. 29% of you said dynamic routing. That is the correct answer. That is what you would not find in a SOHO network. Now, if you're watching this study group for continuing education credit, and maybe you've already got your A+ certification or your Network Plus certification or Security Plus or anything else that requires any type of continuing education unit credit, and this would apply to what you're trying to do, then what you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of my website. There's a Contact Us link there. And in that Contact Us link, you want to put your name, you want to put your email address so that I'll know where to send the certificate back. You want to put that you watched the September 2017 A+ study group, and you want to put the special code word of dynamic routing. And if that's in there, then I know you must have watched up to this point or seen it somehow. And now I can send you a continuing education unit certificate. It's an email. It's not a physical certificate. I'm not sending you a piece of paper. Nobody sends pieces of paper anymore. So I send you an email that's been digitally signed by me that says you must have watched this. These are messages that come direct to me. So if anything else in there you want to put to me, I read through all of them before I send them back. So feel free to do that as well. Something that you can use if you're needing to renew or use one of those continuing education unit credits for anything else that you might have. So something there. I'm a little behind at getting them out, but I will update and get them out very, very quickly, I hope. Let's get through another question before we run out of time today. The question is dealing with RAID. How many drives are required to build a RAID 1 array? How many drives are required to build a RAID 1 array? I've got a number of different options available. Is it 1 or more, 2 or more, 3 or more, 4 or more, or 10 or more? I'm really looking for the bare minimums here. How many are required? How many must you have at a bare minimum to build a RAID 1 array? If you think you know, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and answer. If you're not watching this live, then you can't go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There's nothing there waiting for you. So that's one of those things where you just going to have to follow along with us and wait for people to answer how many drives would be required to build a RAID 1 array. This is something you will be expected to know from your CompTIA exam objectives. It's in the 901 exam objectives, I believe. We'll know in a moment. Is it? I can look, or is it the 902 objectives? It's the 901 objectives. Hard to see in the little writing I have on the screen. So that's one where you start working through that. That's one you definitely want to use and have that there. If you think you've ever in a situation where you need to build some RAID arrays, you need to know how many are the minimum number of drives. So this would be something to think about. Let's see how we did with this one, being able to work through it. How do we do? Well, 83% of you must think it's 2 or more, because that's a big number to have there. On 9% said we need 3 or more. And then it's effectively a tie for third for 1 or more, 4 or more, or 10 or more. So what is the best way to work through these RAID requirements? What do we need to have available? Well, there's a chart that's here that I have available in my videos. This is from the 901 video 4.2, troubleshooting hard drives, where we need to know more about recovering RAID. We lose a RAID drive. What's the minimum of having that there? And you can see with RAID 1, we need 2 or more drives. And as long as we have 1 drive, RAID 1 obviously is mirroring. So we have at least 2 drives, and everything on 1 drive is duplicated on the other drive. So if a drive failed, if a hard drive, and hard drives fail, they're a piece of machinery, they're spinning disks, and if they don't spin properly and they stop working, we've got another drive there that hopefully is continuing to operate that's got an exact duplicate of the data. We lose nothing there. It's a fantastic benefit to have the RAID 1, but obviously it requires a lot of drives. If you need 1 drive, you're going to need 2. You need double of everything. If you have 10 drives, then you need 10 more to make RAID 1, because you need a duplicate of everything. It's a little bit of a pain. There's other ways to get around that. In the videos, I talk about things like RAID 5, which allow you to have redundancy without having to duplicate everything, and a little bit more advantage when you're trying to store data. So good job on this one. 84% of you that said 2 or more indeed got this one absolutely right. You need 2 as a minimum because you have your original drive, and if you need a duplicate of that drive, you need at least another one to go with it. And that is indeed the very, very bare minimum of the number of drives you would need to be able to set up and run a RAID 1 array. Useful to have that there too. Well done. Let's do another question. I've got another one in here that we can go through. And the question we have is, it's about OS 10. The question is, what key sequence would be the best choice to force an app to quit in OS 10? What key sequence would be the best choice to force an app to quit in OS 10? Would it be Control-Alt-Delete? Would it be Command-Space? Would it be Command-Alt-Delete? Would it be Control-Alt-Escape? Would it be Command-Option-Escape? One of those would be the best choice to force an app to quit in OS 10. I told you there'd be OS 10 and Linux questions on the exam. We got a bunch of them today. We got 2 of the questions we got were about other operating systems other than Windows. Just kind of worked out that way. But how do we do on this one? Some of you may have worked with a Mac before. This may not be a big deal for you to be able to answer this question. If you have not worked on OS 10, pretty good idea for you to get some stick time, some hands-on, some flight time on OS 10 before you jump into the exam. And the exam objectives tell you exactly the things you need to know on there to be able to work through them. So I highly recommend that you do that as well and work through all of them. Always helps. And as you can tell, in a lot of environments, they're moving to have more OS 10 devices, more Linux devices. Practically everybody has Linux devices these days, but certainly more OS 10 devices than I've ever seen before out there. So now's the time to learn them. Let's see how we did. 59% said Command-Option-Escape, but 20% said Control-Alt-Escape. 11% said Command-Alt-Delete, and then a tie for 4th with Command-Space and Control-Alt-Delete. So which would it be? How would we be able to restart that app? This is a situation you might run into really on any operating system. This happens in Linux, this happens in Windows, and it happens in OS 10. If it's a computing device, you can't get away from it. There's going to be a time when something's going to freeze up on that system. Just stop completely. If you are in Windows and Linux, you may be able to start up the task manager with Control-Alt-Delete. Now, one of the things you will run into in Mac OS X is that there is no Control-Alt-Delete. You don't have that functionality there, but you have a similar functionality, bringing up a list, able to remove a device that's in the list, and you get to that force quit command with Command Option Escape. That's the secret keystroke, which will really help you if everything's just frozen up. You can't use the mouse, nothing's happening on the screen. The keys you need to know are Command Option Escape. We really didn't fool anybody with that one. Indeed, Command Option Escape, Option E, 59% of you did get that one absolutely correct. That's one you certainly need to know if you're working on OS X, because you never know one of these crazy. If you're using Microsoft software on OS X, you really need to know Command Option Escape. I speak from experience of using those. Not all developers know what they're doing on the OS X operating system. I got to tell you, when you work through those, it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So you got the best operating system in the world. Doesn't matter if you've got somebody who doesn't know what they're doing when they build the applications. You run into that all the time, though. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more question before we're done today. And the question is, which of the following would be the most appropriate use of registered memory? Which of the following would be the most appropriate use of registered memory? Would it be A, a database server, B, a gaming desktop, C, a media server, D, a thin client, or E, a video editing workstation? Which of these would be the most appropriate use of registered memory? Or registered memory, which would it be? If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer the question answer, and see if you know what the most appropriate use of registered memory might be. Have you used registered memory? Do you know about registered memory? Registered memory? Maybe you know about registered memory. I might have used it a number of times. Registered memory. That's one, whenever you start working through building a system, you're going to need to know all these different memory types. And that's one you should absolutely know about, primarily because it's in your exam objectives. Which of the following would be the most appropriate use of registered memory? Let's see how we did. Click. 59%, just over that 50% mark I like to do. We're up to 60% said database server. 14 and 13% said thin client or video editing workstation. And then I'd say a tie for third as well with gaming desktop and media server. Registered memory. Registered memory is called that because there's a physical extra register that is in the memory module itself. It's probably more commonly called buffered memory because it effectively creates this extra buffer between the memory and the memory controller. So you've got this memory module that is constant. That's one of your highest throughput in your computer is between the memory module and that memory controller, which these days is even inside your CPU. So it's really your CPU, the memory. It's a massive amount of information going back and forth. And registered memory very commonly used on servers because it helps even things out as the conversations are going back and forth, the requests and the responses are going back and forth. Having a middleman helps even things out. It's not quite as choppy a conversation between the memory module and the memory. So you're able to get a little bit more stability in the memory. And in many ways, makes a perfect thing to use on a server that needs to be up and running all the time. We don't commonly see registered memory or buffered memory used on a desktop computer. It just doesn't have the same requirements for stability. And in fact, the memory in a desktop computer is already pretty stable. That's an extremely stable environment. Servers need an extra level of stability. And you're able to get some of that extra level of stability by using registered memory. So if you answered a database server, a perfect example of where you would use registered memory, the 62% of you. You said gaming desktop, Well, maybe you think you need this level of stability in a gaming desktop. Not really. If it's your home computer, does not really require and probably doesn't even have the option to use registered memory. Media server, again, a server you're using at home for media, not really the same as running a full-time database server or web server or file server. Then client, video editing workstation, similar scenario, devices you'd have at home, devices you'd have on a desktop, not quite the same requirements as a device that would be in the data center. And that's when we start talking about registered memory. That's where that comes from. So if you're one of the 63% that answered A, database server, you got it absolutely right. Well done. All of these questions we did today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Everything you need to know is in there. People ask me all the time, what do I need to know for my exam? What are the most important topics? What are the things I should focus on? Everything's in there. They listed out completely everything you need to know. If you need to get a copy of these, go to professormesser.com/objectives or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, download the objectives. It makes a great checklist too, because you can start going through the list and go, do I know this? Yep. Can I explain this to someone else? Sure. Do I know what this is? I have no idea. You can circle it, highlight it, read about it, watch the video, read in your book, look at the notes, understand that topic, then go to the next one. So a perfect way to help study for what you're doing. Well, I do an hour's worth of these study groups every month. The next one's going to be in October, on October the 4th for A+. If you're someone doing Network Plus, if I am still here, if the storm has not come through and taken me away, or probably more likely taken my electricity away, then I will be here and available next week at this time. So you don't have to wait till October to do this, but you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar, and I try to keep everything updated there. You'll know when the next live event is, especially if you're watching this in a replay and being able to work through this and have it there. Wow, is it an hour? Did we go through an hour already? That's okay. You can always keep up with what we're doing here at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about my course notes at professormesser.com/A+CN. There's also my pop quiz collection that you might want to look at professormesser.com/PQC for pop quiz collection. There's also the special price for the live labs, professormesser.com/live labs. And of course, the calendar is always there to tell you everything that's going on. Well, that ends kind of the formal Q&A for the A+ study group. I'm going to open up the phone lines though and have you call in, ask questions in the chat room, or get them to me in whatever way. We'll just open up and talk about whatever we'd like to in the second hour. If you have to leave us, thank you for joining us for this first hour. We're going to do another one of these next month. We hope to see you there as well on the Professor Messer A+ study group. Thanks, everyone. Well, that was a quick hour. I think I got through all of my questions this time, though, which I think I did. I got through every single one of my questions this time, which has never happened in the history of ever. Pretty happy about that, because there's 10 questions that I create every month. We got through all 10 of them. That was pretty nice. Let me get the phone lines open. Let's see. I'm going to click a few things here. Clickety click. Start the Skypey. Get this going here. One moment, please. You can tell my large staff of people is here, getting things up and running. There is no large staff of people. It's just me. Let's host a show. Let's start the show. Let me call into the show. I have to call into my own show. What's that about? I don't know, but here we are. Let's start this up. Let me call in. It's going to beep, 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 beep. And it's going to say, oh, I've still got the bird feeder up. Oh, it's beeping. It's going to pick up? Maybe not. Come on. Call in. There we go.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome.
Host and
I know.
Screener line.
Okay.
Please enter your show.
I will. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to hit this thing.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
All right. And if I do that, what happens?
Welcome.
See? Welcome. And what the welcome means that There it is. Oops, I already put it on the screen. What's wrong with me? There's a phone number you can use if you wanted to call in and talk directly to me. You can also put questions in the chat room. I'll be glad to answer them there as well. The number, if you care to call it, is 855-785-7545. You can also call in via Skype anywhere in the world, absolutely free, no Skype minutes required, by putting a +1 at the beginning of that, 855-785-RJ45. See what I did there? That really is the number to have that there. So feel free to give a call in. It'll pick up the phone. It'll tell you that you're on the phone. You'll hear a beeping noise when I go to the phone line, and you'll know exactly what's going on there. So I need to turn this down a little bit. I need to, I saw the bird feeder was out there. What was going on with what's going on outside? I can't see what's going on outside whenever I'm working through this. This is a dark room. I mean, and you can see, looks like the rain has already come through, but no birds, alas. But we're still here. We're still here. There's nothing to worry about until the weekend. Then we'll have something to worry about, I assure you. Let's go to the phone lines, though. We've got the 609 area code. Caller, are you there? What's your name?
Hello?
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing today?
Hey, Mike, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I've been looking at your videos for quite a while now, and I do want to thank you for all the hard work you've done.
Well, thank you for watching them.
Thank you. I appreciate you. My question for you today, well, I have like 2 or 3 of them. My goal right now is to get certified in network. My goal is to get my Network Plus, my Security Plus, and then do a loop around for my A Plus.
Nice.
How do you have any advice for me? Because I do want to get my feet wet inside the industry as soon as possible. I do work right now at a wireless store, T-Mobile, so I'm getting the mobile side of things. But as far as like more of the computers, the networks, and everything like that, to get started, do you think I should get more? My question basically, should I aim for help desk positions right now, or for my Network Plus, look for a job like that at the moment?
The help desk is usually the way into most organizations. It's not always the only way into most organizations, but it's a very common way to start at these organizations. Usually you're looking for a position generally at a very large or medium-sized organization to get in, because those tend to have the largest different types of systems to work on. You have Windows devices and Linux and Mac and everything in between. The challenge, though, is finding one of those positions in your area. And what I recommend for everybody is to go out and start doing a job hunt right now. Even if you don't plan to give them a resume or put your name into the hat, see what they're asking for. Some organizations are going to tell you exactly the requirements that are needed. They may say that you need a Security Plus and nothing else. They may say that you need an A Plus and nothing else. They may say that you don't need any certifications at all, that it's all based on something else, either experience or maybe formal education, or maybe they say you don't need any of those. Some companies, their philosophy is hire somebody who doesn't have any of that experience. We will train them. Obviously, we don't need to pay them as much as someone who's certified, so there is a trade-off for the employer, but it's an opportunity that if you don't have any of those certifications or knowledge, maybe that would be a good place to get your feet wet and learn some of the things that you need to know before you go to the next step. One of the things that you may want to even look at, if you find that the wireless world is interesting, every organization out there has a need to manage wireless devices these days. It's a huge concern, primarily from not just a mobility perspective, but a security perspective. You have all of these different devices. They're all owned by individuals. They've got company information on them. How do you keep them secure? How do you manage them, the devices? What happens if somebody loses a device that has company information on it? And there are these mobile device managers. There's a whole industry that has suddenly appeared almost out of nowhere to manage all of these devices. So have a look at what people are asking for, and don't be afraid to start meeting some of these people now. Go to a Microsoft user group meeting, meet the people who are there, because the people in those meetings are hiring to fill some of these positions, whether they are directly related to the help desk or they're being asked by the help desk manager to help with interviewing the people that come in. Always nice to know people who are already working in some of those organizations. So that may be a good starting point.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And my follow-up question was, for me right now, since networking is my primary goal for my career, would it be like any significant benefit to me to start studying for my A+, or is it Network Plus? It kind of dives. Some of Network A+ is in Network Plus, correct? If I am studying for it,
a little bit of overlap. That's correct. A+, really, what do I need to configure on the network of a workstation to get it on the network? And then Network Plus takes it from there.
Okay, understood. And my last question is, what's the primary differences between the Network Plus and the CCNA?
They are two completely different certifications. You should think of them as two completely different certifications. A lot of people try to wait between the two. Should I do this one or should I do that one? That's the wrong question. The question is, do I need a job where people are asking for the skills that are needed that I would learn in Network Plus? Or are they asking for somebody who has the skills that I would learn in the CCENT or the CCNA routing and switching certifications? Because the Cisco certifications are deep. You dive right in and you dive right to the bottom, and you're doing hands-on and configuring switches and configuring routers. It's a relatively difficult set of exams to get through. The Network Plus is more high level. I need an introduction to networking. I need to learn these terms. I need to understand how networks at least operate. And then once I know that, maybe I want to shift into doing something like switch and router administration, which is really where the Cisco exams are focused on. So you can think about help desk is more Network Plus. Being able to manage the switches and the routers in the network, I would need the CCNA routing and switching certification. Two very different worlds, two completely different jobs, and they have a completely different set of skills that you need for both of those.
Awesome. Professor Messer, you're honestly amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling. That's one where you really have to measure out, what do you want to do? That's really where you should start. What am I looking at doing? Mike knew. Like, I want to do networking. What should I do? Well, if you're going to do networking, get your foundation. And then if you want to do that Cisco job, jump into the Cisco and see what people are asking for. I went through a number of certifications and got them. And then near the end of my formal enterprise career, working for other people, I didn't need a lot of certifications because a lot of the experience I already had stood on its own. So I didn't need anything. Interestingly enough, the last job I had when I got there made me get a certification that was managed by that company. So I worked for a firewall company, and they said, well, you work here, you're going to need to get our certification. I'm like, okay. That was relatively easy, since at that point I knew everything I needed to know about how to use these devices. It's a pretty easy one to walk into. Let's go to the phones. 574. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, Professor Messer. This is Paul. How are you?
Hey, Paul. Very good, thank you. Appreciate your calling. What can we do for you?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you so very, very much for all you do for all of us. It's just been, I've been going through your videos, and I've been just really impressed by the quality and the content. It's just been terrific, and I wanted to thank you for that, sir.
You're very kind, sir. Thank you, and appreciate you watching as well. I like to say that I'm doing the easy part. You're actually the one that has to do the hard part.
Well, with the product set, I've been working on the 901 exam right now.
Good.
And it's been very informative, as I stated. And my biggest problem right now is I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And since there's so much information, I try to be more of an analytical person. I try to take things step by step.
Good.
What would you recommend for the best plan of attack to absorb all the information for not only 901, but also once I complete that, going into 902? So I am looking at the information. Basically, I'm looking at 901 first, and I'm trying to basically ignore 902 at this point.
I think that's.
So I was just wondering, What would you recommend for that?
That's a great strategy. It used to be back in the day when you had the 600 series A+ exams. There was a 601, 602. It was actually 603 and 604 at that time. There were 700 series exams, 800 series exams. We're at the 900 series exams now. Back in the day, there was a lot of overlap between the exams. For example, on the first exam you would take, you would learn about the hardware, and then the other exam you would take, you would learn about troubleshooting, or your exam was about troubleshooting the hardware. So you kind of had to keep the knowledge in your brain through both of those exams to make it work that way. In this latest iteration of exams, the 901 and the 902, the exams effectively stand alone. And you'll notice that in the 901, you learn about hardware and you learn about networking. And then the last section of the exam is troubleshooting hardware and networking. So they try to keep everything self-contained in one single exam, which is great for the exam taker, because now you can really focus on learning everything you need to know for the 901. You can study all the topics associated with the 901, really get them in your brain really good, go take the 901 exam, and now completely shift your focus to a completely different set of topics. So there is a very nice split. There's very, very, very little overlap between those two exams, which is great for you and anyone else who's taken these two exams, and why I often tell people, do not take and study to take both of these exams at the same time. You're going to kill yourself if you're someone who's just learning this material. Focus on one exam first, take it and pass it, and then shift gears to the other one. The one thing I will tell most people, and it's really the thing that you really should be doing, is to use the exam objectives. They are an amazing checklist. I have it up on the screen for the people that are watching. I'm going to slide through this first section. You get to section 1 is hardware. And in section 1.1, you need to know, given a scenario, configure settings and use BIOS/UEFI tools on a PC. You need to know how firmware upgrades and flash BIOS operate. You need to understand the BIOS component information. You need to understand in that BIOS component information where the RAM is, what the hard drive looks like, what the optical drive is, and what the CPU is. You need to understand BIOS configurations and the boot sequence. You need to understand enabling and disabling devices in the BIOS, the date and time, the clock speeds, the virtualization support, the BIOS security, including passwords, drive encryption, and that includes things like TPM, LoJack, and secure boot. Already, that's a very detailed list of things, and I'm not even through section 1.1 yet. That's 2 videos effectively of content. The third video was on built-in diagnostics, monitoring, including temperature monitoring, fan speeds, intrusion detection, voltage, clock, and bus speed. You could not ask for a more detailed list of topics on the exam than what CompTIA provides to you. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Nobody else does this but CompTIA. If you can go through this list and check off every single thing that is in that list, then you know everything you need to know for section 1.1 on the 901 exam. And once you have that down, now you can go to the next thing. You can go to 1.2, which is explain the importance of motherboard components, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the best ways to test yourself, see how well you know the content so far, see if you missed anything in your reading of your books or looking at your notes or going through videos, making sure that everything that's in this exam objectives are things that you know in your brain that you could explain to somebody else if you were required to. And if you're able to go through this entire set, and there are pages and pages, let me go all the way through this. I'm only in section 3. You see, I keep going. There are, in all of these, I think, do they not have page numbers? So I'm about 10 pages in of these exam objectives. They are very large sets of exam objectives. So make sure you download and use those objectives. If you're somebody like me and they throw everything at you at once and it's all scattered, that's no way to go through life. You need to go through each one of these one at a time. Make sure you understand the topics, check it off your list and go to the next one. That's one, in my mind, when I'm trying to study for a certification exam, that's the best way that I know I've covered all the bases. And if you know everything on this exam objectives, you're ready to go take the exam, and you'll be able to now pass because you know everything that's going to be asked of you.
That's great. And that's really, really great advice, Professor Messer. I've noticed also that perhaps the numbers that are on the list you just put up on the screen, I think that follows along with your videos as well. Is that correct, sir?
To the letter. Somebody sent me a note earlier in the week that said, hey, your videos don't seem to match what's in the exam objectives. I said, what are you talking about? The number in the exam objective matches exactly the number that's on my videos by design for that very reason. If you go to a book, and you should get a good A+ book, but you'll notice the book is put in a different order. And that's because if you really did go through this content in this order, a lot of it doesn't make sense in the order they put it for something that might be used in a course book. Course books usually will jumble things up and try to make them follow a different set of topics that's easier to understand from a learning perspective. But what they will do at the beginning chapter of every book I've ever seen is they will list out, here are the exam objectives we're going to cover in this chapter. So therefore, you can cross-reference back to the exam objectives. And of course, you can cross-reference back to my videos very easily because my video numbers match exactly the numbers that are in the exam objectives.
Excellent, sir. One final question, if I may.
Sure.
Regarding aspect ratios on monitors, there are several different aspect ratios for all the different types of resolutions. Would it be beneficial to basically memorize the aspect ratios to the resolution, or would you recommend trying to do the mathematics on it? Now, I was thinking with the mathematics, there was really very little time during the examination to do the exam because they're not really listed. You don't have a calculator,
right,
from my understanding, is
That's
during
right.
the examination. So that's going to chew up a lot of time. So I was looking at it as to doing the memorization. Would you agree with that, sir?
I would, although in the exam objectives, you'll notice that it just says, compare and contrast types of display devices and their features. And they don't really list out any specific resolutions. They just tell you need to understand what aspect ratios are, specifically 16:9, 16:10, and 4:3. Now, one of the things they do in here is, let's see if in the back of the exam objectives is a big list of acronyms. And in this acronym list, although I don't tell people to go here and specifically memorize every single one of these, one of the things you can do is go through this list and see what video types they would expect you to know. For example, VGA is certainly on the list. WUXGA, wide ultra extended graphics array, and XGA is on the list, but they don't have a lot of others. UXGA is on this list, but you'll notice they don't provide or list out anywhere on here what the exact resolutions of any of those are. So this may be one of those sort of gray areas where CompTIA has given us a topic, they've told us the things we need to know, but they haven't gone into the nth degree of detail. Do they want you to know that nth degree of detail? It's hard to know exactly until you sit down for the exam. But if it's not in the exam objectives, my rule of thumb is not to worry about it. There's way too much to know in these exam objectives, and it will take you forever to study to get through all of these. So instead, focus on what is there and not the things that are suddenly missing or that you're having to extrapolate based on what they're saying. Take it at face value, learn what's in here. Don't worry about going outside that scope, because if you know everything that's listed in these exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. Even if they happen to throw you a curveball that says, compare the resolutions of WUXGA and VGA, what are the differences in the resolution types? How many pixels difference is it? First, they're not going to ask you a question like that because it's ridiculous. But secondly, you can just throw that one away because you know every other answer there is to know from the exam objectives. CompTIA stays very close. So my advice is don't read too much into the exam objectives. Take them at face value, and I think you're going to be fine.
Excellent, sir. Thank you so very much. I'm going to release the call now to the other callers, and I greatly appreciate all the time you spent with me today. Thank you very much.
Glad to do it, Paul. Thanks so much for calling in. Best of luck with your exam. I think it's going to be a good one. And like me, if you stick to the list, you're going to be fine. There were a number of questions that came in from the chat room. Hello, chat room. I see you there. Yes. And working through them. We had a RAID question earlier in the study group where we were talking about RAID 1, and somebody was asking a question about RAID 0, which I thought was a pretty good one. Why would I even use RAID 0? And in fact, the whole, traditionally we say we use RAID 0 because it's faster, because you're writing half the content to one drive, half the content to the other. But we're finding that some of these RAID arrays are going pretty quick with RAID 1 and RAID 5 that almost match RAID 0 these days. In some cases, just as good as RAID 0. So we used to say it's for speed, and I guess technically it is for speed, but it's rapidly changing like anything else in computing. It's hard to tell exactly how fast these things are going to go. Every RAID array and the method it uses is a little bit different. But we know that if we're working through these challenges and trying to figure out what are the differences, still keep the very high-level differences, and I think you'll be fine. Let's go back to the phones. We've got the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Caller. I hear you.
Hello.
Hello. Who is this?
This is Samuel calling from Nigeria.
Well, welcome. Listen in the phone line and not your stream, and you'll do just fine. What can we do for you?
I'm a very big fan of your show.
You might want to turn that stream off so you're not thrown a bit by the sound there. Yeah. What question can we answer for you today?
Okay, go ahead. Okay. I've just kickstarted my career in IT.
Maybe what we'll do, we'll have you turn the stream off,
okay,
and that way we can have we can listen in on the phone line instead, and that way you're not going to be thrown by the echoing that's going there. Is that something you can easily do?
Absolutely, that would be good.
Okay, what's your question?
Hello?
You started in the industry and?
Yeah. I've just kickstarted my career in IT. I've apparently had my first degree in accounting.
Okay.
And I've always been a computer and the internet enthusiast. I've always been a computer enthusiast since I was a kid.
Okay.
So
me too.
Diving into the IT industry at this period of my life is, it's something very, very challenging for me. And before I came across the show, I've done a lot of research over the internet, and I've already started a combo of A+ and CCNA at a computer institute very close to me. So my question would be, I've already chosen a path in the industry. I mean, in the IT industry, and the path is information security. Okay. Because I understand the animals of of security in our daily lives, and not to talk of how important it is to secure information and data. So I think I've got to do a lot if I'm going to be successful in my IT career, because I realized most of the companies and tech industry that hires people in the IT industry seems to demand a foundation of Bachelor of Science in Bachelor of Sciences in Computer Science. So, and I just had a Bachelor of Technology in Accounting, and that's a very, very, very different foundation. But going forward, I'm currently having a combo of A plus and CCNA at the moment, and I want to build a very good foundation for my IT career. And I just want you to give me a piece of advice on the important certification that I should have if I'm going to be successful in the information tech security part.
Sure. And it's a little bit different. I don't know exactly how the requirements are in your part of the world, but at least in the United States and in other places around the world, having a bachelor's of science degree itself is a good qualifier. So even though your Bachelor of Science was in accounting and not necessarily in a technical field, and I wouldn't necessarily say that computer science fits the scenario either, but you at least have that formal degree. That's a pretty important thing. My formal degree, interestingly enough, was in business management. Mine was not in a technical field either. So don't worry so much that your formal 4-year degree is not in something technical, because just having the 4-year degree means a lot to a number of employers. And quite honestly, once you get your first job and then you're ready to get on in the industry, nobody really cares about the details of the degree as much as the things you've already done working in the industry. I like that you're already thinking along the lines of security. That's certainly a very good place to go in IT right now, extremely popular. And as someone who has been in the IT security world, working with next generation firewalls and working for companies doing security with antivirus and anti-malware, it's a very popular part of IT and a very lucrative section of IT as well. It's one you can earn a very good living doing things in IT security. So having the formal degree is a huge plus, even if it's in accounting. In fact, for security, it might actually be more valuable to have something in accounting, since most of the time you're protecting some of those very important financial details. The other thing you're already looking at, which is some certifications, which are exceptional as well. My recommendation that a lot of people sometimes miss when they're looking to go into security is don't put a huge emphasis immediately on security certifications. To get into security, you're going to need a very good foundation in networking. A huge part of IT security is knowing how the network operates. And that's because you're implementing firewalls, intrusion prevention, you're doing tons of reporting, you're putting these systems in usually as routed devices. They're layer 3 devices on the outside of your network. These devices are redundant, so you're integrating with switches and other devices on the inside using redundant protocols and methods. There's so many different ways to do that. Sometimes it's an active-active configuration. Sometimes it's active-passive. You have to know how to architect that on the network and have it talk well with everything else on the inside. You want to be able to understand IP addressing and how it works, especially if you're routing outside of the network through these firewalls. You've got VPN connectivity you have to think about. There's a huge networking component associated with that. So a ton of what you're running into for IT security requires that you understand routing and switching and networking protocols and how all of them work together. So don't miss that as being an important component of that. And of course, right on top of that layer of networking, you're going to need that security knowledge as well. Sometimes that comes through certifications like Security Plus. Sometimes it comes through other certifications that are specific to a manufacturer. Maybe if an employer has a specific firewall type, then they may ask you to have a certification for that specific firewall. That's a very specific security certification. So my recommendation would be find out what the employers are looking for from a security perspective. Get a good foundation in networking, which, by the way, allows you to do practically anything in IT, and then start working your way towards knowing what do I need to know to learn that layer on top of the networking that's going to give me the security knowledge that I need to get into that security role. One of the advantages you have is that networking and security both are very popular parts of IT. You can really find a job doing those types of functions almost anywhere. Every organization has a network team. Every organization has a security team. So it's one where you're guaranteed to have them looking for at least some jobs that are popping up here and there. And it's one where you'll be able to get in entry level and then move your way up as you go, as long as you have those foundations to build upon. Does that help?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ilan. I wouldn't want to take too much of your time, but my next question would be, I'm already having a combo of combination of a combo course of A plus and CCNA. Would you advise me? CCNA is vendor based
Sure.
certification.
Yep.
So would you recommend me to go for Network Plus, which is vendor neutral? And okay, after that, would you suggest I have knowledge in Linux Plus, so that I can have a wide idea of how a different operating system works? And after that, my plan, after having my CCNA, is to go for CCNA plus, CCNP plus, CCNA security, CCMP security,
Yep.
and CCIA security.
Yep.
And do you think would you advise me to go in that path?
If you are looking to get into networking administration, managing switches, managing routers, the Cisco CCNA routing and switching certification is an excellent choice, because it really focuses on what you need to know, not just with understanding Cisco equipment, a Cisco switch and a Cisco router, but a lot of what you learn by going through that certification can be used on all switches and all routers, because the underlying architecture of a network switch is very similar no matter where you go. And things like spanning tree protocols, the same whether you're on a Cisco switch or an HP switch. You also have similarities when you get to routing. BGP, the RIP protocols, dynamic routing in general works the same on Cisco as it works for Juniper. So it's very similar no matter what type of router you happen to have. My recommendation there is, you were talking about starting maybe with the CCNA routing and switching, and then maybe moving to CCNA security and adding on to that. That's an excellent path. In fact, if you're really wanting to get into networking, the CCNA routing and switching is almost the de facto, it's the standard path that people tend to take to get into that world of things. The CCNA routing and switching is 2 exams. They are not easy exams. They're very different than Network Plus or Security Plus. Don't worry so much on whether the certification is vendor neutral or vendor specific. You should instead look at both exam objectives and see, what am I going to learn if I take the Network Plus? Now, what am I going to learn if I take the CCNA routing and switching exams? And evaluate both of those, determine which one do I want to do. In IT, you can really do whatever you want. I started in desktop management or desktop repair, effectively, moved into networking, and then eventually got into security. That was over a number of years, but a lot of the things that I ended up doing at the end of my career did not even exist in the world when I started my career. And the same thing's going to happen to everybody who's starting out right now. There will be new technologies and new things happening in 10, 15, 20 years that we just don't know about today. Your goal is to get the best foundation you can and do the things that interest you, because if you're not doing that, you're not going to have a good time at your job. So find the things in both of those objectives that really make sense, and just follow the one that really tends to appeal to you the most. The one you like the best is really where you should go. And of course, you want to consider what employers are looking for. If none of the employers in your area are looking for Network Plus, and all of the employers in your area are looking for the Cisco certifications, well, then it's obvious which way you should go.
Thanks a lot, and thank you for the program. I'm a big follower of you on Twitter, and I'm a subscriber of your channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot. Nobody does it better. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's and your support is appreciated. I would not be able to do this without people subscribing to the channels, following what we do, giving me feedback and telling me when I'm wrong, which a lot of people say they don't like that feedback. I love that feedback because it lets me know that there's things we could do even better, and we just keep doing that. So thank you for that. Let's go back to the phone lines, the 559 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Caller.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. What's your name?
Hello, Professor.
Hello. Hi. What's your question?
Hi.
I can hear you. You're welcome to ask your question.
Oh, hello, Professor.
Hi.
Hi. I'm calling from UK. My name is Munya. Firstly, I would like to thank you very much for the for all the material that you provide. I bought some of your material and I've passed my CompTIA A plus 901, and I'm taking my 902 this Friday.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations on your 901. Best of luck with your 902. What can I help? Is there a question you have about that?
Yes, the question I have about is that just since I'm going to be taking my 902 this Friday, any tips you can just give me just to make sure that to help me pass this exam, please?
Sure. Well, it's Wednesday, so you've got a couple of days, or at least one full day of study available before Friday hits. The one thing I tell people, and it's almost a broken record at this point. Records, by the way, are things that we used to have back in the day, and when they would break, they would play themselves over and over and over again, just as a point of reference. So when you hear me saying something over and over and over again, it's go to the exam objectives, use that as your checklist. That should be, in fact, the first thing you get to go through and understand, but it also makes a very good final checklist. So you can start at that exam objectives for the 902 and go through all of it. There's so much on the 902. You've got Windows, you've got Linux, you've got Mac OS, you've got security, mobile devices. You've got such a broad range of things to know on the 902. Make sure that you go through CompTIA's list. There's probably some things you might have missed along the way, and now's a great time to get that last minute study in before you go into the exam in 2 days and go through this list and say, do I really know everything that's on there? It's a great way to know if you're ready to take your exam too.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then one more question again. It's about, I got a scholarship for Cisco Cybersecurity. And I feel like I'm going to start that December, and I just wanted some tips to help me out as well. Because I'm really keen in network and cybersecurity, and I just trying to prepare myself for that exam for the cybersecurity.
As someone who's gone through in the industry, been in the industry, worked with as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company for many years before doing this full time. I tell people, get as much networking knowledge as you can. One of the things that we always struggled with as when we were working with these very advanced brand new technologies in security is that they had such a strong networking requirement. So as systems engineers, as people who were designing and implementing these next generation firewalls, we found ourselves needing to know so much about the network before we could even start talking about how to layer on the security on top of it. So make sure that, especially if you're going into a Cisco cybersecurity, make sure you understand as much as you can about those Cisco products, and probably more important, about the protocols and the technologies running on top of those. I mentioned earlier, if you're doing switching, you're going to need to know spanning tree and rapid spanning tree. If you know, understand routing, you're going to need to know about OSPF and BGP. So those are things that will apply no matter whose security technologies you use, no matter whose router you use, no matter whose switch, but especially if you're going into a Cisco world.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. I appreciate the work you do. Thank you. Bye.
Quite welcome. Thanks for calling. I like the idea of doing a lot of security, getting a lot of security questions this week, and I think that's fantastic as someone who's been in the industry. Let's go to another call. Caller, the 585 area code. Are you there? Caller. Yes, you are. Hi, what's your name? I hear sounds. Well, they dropped off. They were there for a moment. Maybe they hit the wrong button. So we'll go to another call, 215 area code, right around the corner from me. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, hello. My name is Jeff Gaston.
Jeff.
I had a question about, so recently I completed getting my Security Plus and A Plus, my Network Plus, and I wanted some ideas about the job market. So, like, in terms of part-time and full-time, as I'm currently also pursuing my computer science degree.
Nice. Well, you got a lot going on there. Computer science, of course, kind of a different world than A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. But of course, there's a little overlap in all of these things. I guess it kind of depends also on what you want to be able to do. I keep asking myself this, what I want to be when I grow up. Do you have an idea, or you have an inkling of what a nice job, what the job is you would like to have once you finish with your formal degree?
Yes, I was going to pursue information security and have a little bit of background or some certifications in programming, such as with Java and C++.
Sure, you do want to be careful in spreading yourself a little too thin, but depending on where you go with that, there's some interesting places you can work with this. There's obviously, and I've mentioned this in other study groups before, there's kind of two worlds in IT. There's computer science, which is the programming, development, hardware design, the kind where you're actually building these systems from the ground up. And then you've got everything else in IT, which is switch administration on the network side, and routers and firewalls and file servers and cloud-based systems and virtualization and databases and data centers. Those two worlds are very separate. They don't tend to overlap a lot. There's a little bit of overlap because obviously organizations need applications to run their business, and then they also need those applications to run on systems. So there's usually a handoff between the guys that are building the applications, and they hand it off to the team that has to effectively manage the operations of the applications and make sure everything continues to run. But you don't tend to see a lot of overlap in the job descriptions. You're usually doing something related to computer science, or you're usually doing something related to IT. That doesn't mean there isn't some overlap, but they do tend to be in very different worlds. Now, there's a security component in both of those worlds, of course. On the IT side, there are firewalls, there's intrusion prevention, there's content management, there's malware detection, real time, there's cloud-based malware detection. All these things can be done in the cloud these days as well. There's security based on VPNs. That's a huge part of the IT. But on the computer science side, making sure that applications are secure, making sure that you're using things like a web application firewalls tend to be more on the computer science side, although they tend to be implemented on the IT side. Being able to take executables and pull them apart and find the malware inside of them and trace the malware and find out what it's doing so that you can build systems to protect against it is a huge part of the computer science side of things when it comes to security. So I guess one of the things you may want to do is have a look at what different organizations are hiring for in the security world. Some of them may have a huge focus on security in the IT side. Others may have a huge focus of security on the computer science side. And I think you'll probably see more of a computer science focus on companies that are making these security technologies, and you'll probably see a larger emphasis on the IT side from people that are implementing these security technologies. I guess it also will be probably geographical as well, depending on what organizations happen to be in your geographical area. But it might be worthwhile to see what are companies hiring, especially the big ones in your area. Have a look at their job postings. Ask some of the security people who work in those organizations. They're often pretty happy to help give you some direction as well.
Okay, awesome. So, well, for me, as far as for me, what I would rather not work it. I mean, I'm mainly going off of the towards information security, trying to base off of my having A plus and Security Plus and Network Plus, but since I already have those two certifications, I'd like to build upon them by having some more experience. Although I've attempted to enter the IT field and do jobs, I've been busy and things like that. So I'm thinking what jobs I could use the 3 certifications for. What 3 entry-level position jobs would I be able to get into with those 3 certifications besides like retail and things of that nature?
Right. Well, I could see getting in a starting point at many organizations. There's kind of 3 places you can go. And I think I've done all 3 of these jobs, so I can give you at least my perspective. One is working for a firm that provides some type of professional service to be able to implement or fix desktop systems. Not every organization manages their own set of desktops. A good example are companies like Dell that has field technicians where you work for Dell or you work for a contractor of Dell. And when somebody calls to get warranty repair on their Dell server, their Dell laptop, their Dell desktop machine, you are dispatched. They ship you the equipment. They ship you a new motherboard. You to put the motherboard in your car. You drive to the customer's place. You take apart their system. You put the new motherboard back in, and off you go to the next one. You can learn a lot that way. One of my first job out of college was effectively doing that. It was on a much a larger scale in Miami. I was also implementing and putting in hard drives and upgrading memory and systems and in some cases delivering cables. I'll do anything, whatever needed to be done. That's one place you can go. Another one is within these organizations themselves. A lot of these organizations have help desks. And so they need somebody knowledgeable in the technology to be able to take the phone call and not just understand what the people are saying on the phone, but also talk to them in a way that you can help them with their problem. I think that's probably the more difficult skill, is to have those customer service skills that can say, oh, I hear what you're saying. Let's see if we can resolve the problem. Let's walk through the issue. And if you're someone who can help somebody like that over the phone, it's almost better than having the customer service skills than having the technical skills in many ways. And thirdly, inside a lot of these organizations that do manage their own hardware, they need somebody to manage the desktops and manage the servers. There are a lot of entry-level positions there as well because they need that grunt work where you got to go to the desktop, pick it up, replace it, plug it all back in, have it image the system, and get the person back up and running. You need a warm body to be able to perform that function. So a lot of places will have people hired that will perform that warm body function for them. And that's a good entry-level position too. So that's probably 3 very good ones. You could start looking for job openings. Who are advertising for those types of jobs? How can you start with those? And then at that point, you just learn as much as you can whenever you get into one of those roles.
And what about in terms of like the security field? Let's say, like instead of just an entry level, what about for a mid level with security plus, and for somebody that's also pursuing CCNA and CCNA security?
There are not a lot of entry level positions in security. There are some, so don't take that as a blanket statement. But it's not the same market as someone who is getting a help desk position or a remote service tech position. There are a lot more of those help desk positions out there than there are entry-level security. And that's primarily because security layers on a huge networking component and then the security component on top of that. It's hard to hire somebody off the street who already has the foundational knowledge they need to be able to jump into a role like that. I'm seeing more and more entry-level security positions today than I used to see years ago, primarily because the market needs security people and there's just not enough people out there. So a lot of companies have started building these entry-level positions to get people finally in. Part of the challenge you have, though, is these entry-level security positions tend to go to people in the organization who are on the network team. And this is what I see. I used to travel around the eastern United States to very large companies, and I would talk to people who are implementing these firewalls, and almost everybody in the security team once worked in the network team. That's another one of those examples where it's not 100%, but it's pretty close. And that's because there's such a huge networking component. So when you're hiring people for the entry-level security, your entry-level security is almost hiring a foundational, established, knowledgeable networking person jumps into entry-level security. That makes sense. So you kind of have to work yourself up to networking before you can then think about working yourself into the entry-level security. It's not always like that. I've known a number of people who've been in my chat and other places as well who did manage to get an entry-level security without having some of those others jobs or other knowledge to begin with, but they're few and far between.
Okay. All right. That's all for my questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. It's one of those where you just have to look around at what people are hiring for in your area. And if you're ever, I tell people you need a formal degree, you need certifications, you need some practical experience, and it's great if you already know people. Those are the 4 things. And one of the hardest ones is already knowing people. The problem is that if you only have 1 or 2 of those other 3 things, maybe you have a formal degree, you have no certifications, you have no practical experience. Well, knowing people is really going to help you when you start into that first job. One of the best places to meet people is a user group meeting. Find out in your area where the Microsoft user group meetings are. Find out where the folks are that are doing IT security. There may be an ISSA chapter in your area. Go meet those people. Go to those meetings. Physically attend those meetings. Don't do it online. Don't do it virtually. Go to the place and go to those meetings and meet those people. Don't just go to the meeting, by the way. Introduce yourself. There's always time either before the meeting. There's usually time where they're serving some pizza. You're sitting down at a table. It's a great opportunity to meet people. Hi, my name's James. I just graduated from this place. Who are you? What do you do? Well, why are you here at this meeting? You're here at the meeting to network. The other people there at the meeting to network as well. They want to know you. I must have had, and I've told this story as well in the industry, I must have had 10 or 12 different jobs at different companies throughout my career. And that's quite a few. Now I'm thinking about it. Some of them were boomerangs where I left and I came back. But my first job I got in IT was a remote tech kind of position. And I didn't know anybody there when I got the job. I don't know how I got the job, but I got the job. And I worked that job not knowing anybody, got hired for the job not knowing anybody. But every job I got after that, when I moved from company to place, every time I knew somebody at that company. Every single time. Don't discount that. Don't forget about that, because there's a huge opportunity. Even if it's not the person hiring you, when you sit down for the interview, you can tell the people, oh yeah, I know George in the networking team. I knew him from the Microsoft user group. Knowing someone who's there makes people more comfortable with knowing who you are. Oh, you know George. Okay, well, we'll go talk to George after this, but it's good that you know somebody who's here already. There's a connection. And those connections are powerful. That's good stuff. Don't discount those. Don't forget about those. Knowing it, ultimately it's a people. And we talk about technology, we talk about computers, we talk about networks, and we talk about security. It's really about people. And if you can know the people who are already there, they know you, it becomes so much easier to get into that organization, to get a job, and to do what you want to do in this industry. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour. Can you believe it? We got through all of these, all of our Q&A. Thank you so much for your phone calls today. It was fantastic. Thanks for attending in the first hour and doing the Q&A. The hurricane is inbound. Ideally, at this time next week, on Wednesday at noon, there will be a Network Plus, a study group that will be live from here. I think we'll be okay. If I don't have power, I will watch the Twitter. I will tweet out if we don't have power, but hopefully everything will be okay. If not, you'll certainly hear about it. I'll take plenty of pictures. Check the Instagram. We'll know exactly what's going on here. Hopefully you'll be able to attend. We'd love to see you here next week for the Network Plus study group. Don't forget about doing the next week's or next month's A Plus study group. And also, 2 weeks from now is the Security Plus Study Group. There's always something going on. I want to thank you for joining us this time on the A Plus Study Group. We will see you next month on the next edition of the Professor Messer A Plus Study Group. Thanks, everyone.